Okay, I'll leave, that's the sun, that's the moon, that's the sun. Um, right now, well, let's just add the Mercury in here. The Mercury in the 10th house in Cancer. It's very sensitive. It's very imaginative in the 10th house, but it tends to be security oriented. It tends to think about, even Cancer in the 10th house, you want to turn a hobby into a career. Or some people would want to be nurse. Some people might have a restaurant. Some people, you'd want to have something that you're feeling you can do. But this Mercury in the 10th house has a good imagination, but it tends to be practical in business. Like the Cancer sensitive about the ideas, what's going on, and that works. The sun, the Mercury, all this 10th house stuff. But the sun, the Cancer Mercury is this sensitive, tied up by, ruled by the moon. Oh, I'm thinking, what am I thinking about? I'm in this status, I'm in this position. What I'm thinking about my past and where I'm coming from. I got this job, I got a job, I don't want to tell mom. I got this job, but it's not how I'm living. You know, like there's going to be differences around, but there's complications around this moon. So there's a strong, around the Mercury, there's a strong need to be affirmative and positive, not get caught in the negative or the guilt-ridden feelings of the past. But there's an ability to worry about the needs of security. I need security. I don't feel secure. I appreciate this. That moon has a worrying quality or style quality, and the Mercury which is ruled by it, is going to worry about it and think about it. It's going to affect the way she thinks. Now, the Mercury has good aspects to it. It only has one bad aspect, one difficult aspect. That's the Saturn. Okay, so the Saturn's going to depress or worry or cause Mercury to be cautious. I'm going to be a little more cautious. I may not talk so much. I may hold it. I may strategize it. I may plan things. Okay, so but her planning is going to be tied up to the past, to where she's coming from, what she's been, what she's doing. So she's planning to get her own thing together, coming out of the past of the moon she's come out of. But she's not supported by the moon. So if the Mercury gets caught up in confusions of the past, it could shut down the forward movement. So she can have a big performance of something she's going to do, and then she's worrying about it so much she starts eating or binging or not eating, and she ends up with not feeling well in the moment that she's doing things. But the Saturn Mercury implies there's a tendency not to have there's a need to use your knowledge, but there's a tendency to not have the education so much when you're younger. You know, and yet, or that dad didn't talk to her that much, or there were difficulties around this, and she's having to set up things for herself in her life. But how do you turn the hobby into career and think about it? So the Mercury to Saturn brings in the worry or the serious thinking, the strategic thinking. It's in Cancer. It's very personal. It takes everything personally. And it's ruled by the moon. So as long as she's not living clearly or simply or self-reliantly, it's going to really affect her Mercury. And she's going to know, it's going to know how it's going to affect other people. And she may or may not want people to know how she's living. Okay, but the Mercury, these are her Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, they're all above the horizon. They're all in social functional worlds. They're not down in the personal world at home. So her judgments are going to be out that way. But certainly, the Mercury and the Sun in the 10th house, and the Jupiter is just in the 11th. Her ability to get a following, to be noticed, she can do this easily. She has a prominent chart. She has to aspire to prominence and accomplish something. So perhaps one day she would write a book on something psychologically deep or something astrological and be known for her book. Oh, that would be great. That would build up that confidence, and then that would be an accomplishment. So this need to accomplish, 10th house, it's there with the Sun, it's there with the Mercury. And the Mercury rising above the horizon in the 10th house of ambitious, driving achievement, practical. So her ability to be cautious in planning, instead of this caution and the moon insecurity, it tends to be a different side than the blatant, here I am, Sun, with the confidence. So she has the confidence, but then she has the worry. She has the two sides. The rising side is confident, the setting side is not confident. Because the setting side, the moon, has its difficult situations. Saturn's in the 7th house of relationships. We'll come to this in a minute, but it puts weight and worry on the Mercury. So her confusing planets are setting. Her responding is difficult and doesn't get all the response she needs or wants. But doing things, she has the drive to do it. But why bother if no one cares? Why care if no one bothers? Okay. So the more you get used to it, the more you go through these steps fairly quickly. But for your chart, we've done the planets and the signs and the categories and the houses and the categories and the aspects. So we've done all these pieces on our charts. So I'm just trying to hold the structure as best I can and follow through making associations and trying to keep seeing how this works. So I'm seeing the one planet, but I'm seeing how it's being affected, how it's reinforcing or taking away from other factors that have come up in the chart so far. Pattern type, the moon phase, the moon, the different things. So when we see the moon and the moon phase is the waning phase, I'm moving towards the new beginning, but I'm not there yet. I got to get towards the new beginning. That feeling is going to create a sort of insecurity, caution. I can't stay here. But then when she's trying to remember, she remembers all the places she got away from where she shouldn't have stayed and how it wasn't, how the confusion comes in on her memory and then on her lifestyle. So when she's feeling a response to other people and not being appreciated, she would worry she would go home and either have the bucket ice cream or whatever, or just something sweet or something nice, or she'd feel very insecure and about if she got overweight, she'd feel insecure about being overweight. And what would people think? And how's it going to show? I've got to leave this, so she could get bulimic, or she could get like all of this stuff. She has had a lot of dietary complications in her life, and that's the background that affects how the strong projection. Wow. But why project? And why be so noticeable if you're not getting the feedback? Has to project anyways. So she always wears nice clothes, nice things, always really noticeable, above and beyond the average person. That gets her the extra attention right away. But that can also get her envy or jealousy from other people because she seems to be walking room and take the attention. Yeah. Well, I guess it's the divine right of queens or kings. But so when you imagine as a kid wanting to play and playing, and here I am, and then not being encouraged, don't, you can't do that. What do you do that for? What do you do that? It's living up to family moon expectations, almost impossible. But being able to make something go for herself, anything could be better than that. That's the Sun Jupiter talking. So there's someone who's studied astrology a long time and gone through my classes a couple of times. So she knows it well and can understand it and has the Jupiter Sun to teach it. She has things she can do well. And eventually probably needs to set up the business around that. But the Mercury trines the Neptune, trines the sextiles to Venus. It's only the square to Saturn, the caution or the worry, the inhibition. Oh, I'm not good enough. I couldn't write that. So if I write a book's too big. Oh, I'll never do that. I get bored, or I could do that. But she wrote a little story at a time as she felt it, wrote something each day. Her Mercury could build up to accomplishment. Having a personal book or something accomplished, wow, that would give her the feedback she needs to get the confidence to go further. And it brings it all into the present now, which is where Mercury works best, rather than talking herself out of it. But this worry will come from Saturn. Okay, we'll jump over to Saturn. We'll look at Saturn. Oh, maybe I'll do Venus first. No, I'll do Saturn. Saturn's in Aries. Not a comfortable place for Aries. That's like stop, start, take your time, hurry up. It's caution in the impulsive sign, so it's defensive action. But impulsive accomplishment, the Saturn is impatient. The Sun with the Mars square the Sun and the Jupiter is impatient too. But her Saturn is accentuated by the pattern type. It's the handle of the bowl. it sits there in the 7th house, being her energy is all going to go out towards the 7th house. Like that, the bucket's going to has all these ideals, all these people it knows everything, but it's put its energy to the 7th house of partnership. So the Saturn in Aries, it's stops hard, it's insecure there. It's hard to be exactly disciplined because it's pushing, it's not pushing. I got to drive this, I got to do this. But in the 7th house, it's above the horizon setting. It's the partnership. So there's a tendency to have a serious partnership. So like this often means the Aries on the descent is like fools rush in, and you think you might marry a young guy or something would happen on impulse. You have the physical guy, but Saturn has the delay factor, a restrictive factor on this. So the Saturn's going to say, well, the Saturn in the 7th house implies an older marriage or a marriage when one's later, or an inhibition or a caution in marriage, a marriage for stability or for security. This will provide the security, this will provide the stability. This is defensive move. I think I can't throw this away. This is need to be cautious. But then the worries or the cautions of the husband will affect her thinking and what she has to do to prove she can carry things. Okay, now, so there's going to be some defensiveness, some inhibition around the partner. It's practical, it's cautious. You're not going to expect sympathy from Saturn in the 7th house. Practical concerns, husband, his career, whatever. But that means she's going to get the worries, not necessarily support or enthusiasm or encouragement from the husband for what she thinks or for what she wants to achieve or do. It's trining her sun and the Jupiter. It's not, there's good aspects to it, but the difficult aspects around her thinking. So she's saying, I'll never do this, or I can't do this, or he's not there. She can't expect the mental support from her partner. She might marry a nice physical guy, but there might be some caution or something, how he works or whatever, that's different than what she wants to do. Then there's a complication between how I want to live and what I've got. Whether it's an old person or that seriousness is a Saturn. In the Aries, it's stop-start, it's impulsive, it's impatient, it's a little irritable. But in the 7th house, it's the Saturn setting above the horizon, but it's how you begin to respond. So when she goes to respond to people, she's defensive. When she takes energy, when she takes feelings in, she tends to get in it. She doesn't want to be put down, but she tends to be defensive, so she isn't rejected or made to look less. She wants the applause, but she gets the cautious response. She's going to get a mix of all of this, but you see the Saturn is trying. There's only one difficult aspect. That's the difficult aspect to Mercury. So the worry, what do I have to do? What's the husband going to do? What he's going to do? How I have to align with what I have to do? That worry about how to hold the package together. That's the Mercury-Saturn. And eventually still live the way I want to live, complications, based on what's expected of her. She could be over-dedicated, then over-aloof. And then, but getting her own career, getting her own sun up in the 10th house going would really resolve this puzzle, but not necessarily going to be supported for it. In fact, the husband could be threatened by her getting famous or being known, could be a threat to the husband.